Welcome to the live performance of 13 Seconds in Kent State, Episode 5 from the Outcasts Creative. Please do subscribe to our channel for future online performances and video blogs. During the live performance, 2 cast members will act as cover for any members of the company who experience technical difficulties. Should the performance be halted for any reason, we will attempt to resume it as soon as possible. The following story is based on events that took place between 1970 and 1975 in the state of Ohio. It is based on eyewitness accounts, interviews, transcripts, and written testimony. Several characters and events have been combined to simplify the narrative and for dramatic purposes.
Hi, I'm Alan, and Canfora, that is. Now, please forgive the giant caterpillar stuck to my face, but in all honesty, it was fashionable at the time. Now, if you've got this far with our story, then I am sure you already know that I was one of the injured who survived the May 4th massacre. And myself and some of my blood brothers will be guiding you through the last part of our tragic story. Now, some would say that I was a radical, but let me tell you, that word, radical, gets an awful lot of misuse. And it's become a label that politicians, they just love using it, and it tends to make people think that you're just one step away from being a terrorist. So yeah, I was part of the anti-war movement, but like my friend Allison said, I never thought that not sending our young men off to die in a country that they had never heard of just to make, a few old men that little bit richer was such a radical idea. So if that makes me a radical to believe that, then hey, so be it. Now, there's been some absent players from the telling of our story, not least of all the parents of those of us who were shot but survived. Like my dad, Albert Canfora, Janice Rentmore, Robbie's mom and pop, Charlotte and Floyd. Now, they were in that courtroom day after day, standing shoulder to shoulder with the rest of us. But like we've said, this story has one hell of a big chessboard, and we simply can't show you all the pieces that we had in the limited time that we have to tell you our story. But it is so important that you know that there were so many more of us dedicated towards our search for the truth. Like my sister, Chick. She still continues that good fight to this very day. But back in 1975, it was 10 weeks into the trial, and our good Governor Rhodes, he'd been on the stand for half a day when we had broken for lunch, as the judge just loved to say. It was my good fortune to bump into His Excellency in the bathroom of that courthouse that very day, just before he was due to retake the stand.
Whoa! Yeah, it's you! Well, don't worry, son. This will all be over soon, and us grown-up folks can get back to running the country.
Now, you listen to me. You might think that you have that courtroom sewn up, but let me tell you, when the truth of this comes out, and I promise you one day it will, then what you let happen at Kent State will be all you will be remembered for.
I suppose you think running around that little black flag of yours made you famous?
I wouldn't worry about fame, Your Excellency, because you have it. Infamy, though? Well, that'll stick just a little bit longer.
All rise. Cleveland Court 202 in the great state of Ohio is now in session. Judge J.D. Young presiding.
How are you doing, Governor? Governor, you fine?
I'm
Okay?
just fine. I am just fine. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Good, good, good. Mr. Kelner, do you have any further questions for His Excellency?
It's a small matter, Your Honor.
Well, proceed then.
Governor, during the firehouse meeting, Police Chief Thompson pledged that he and his men would shoot if necessary to enforce the law.
I recall something being said like that, yes.
Do you remember General Del Corso making this remark? Because in your previous testimony, you'd attributed that remark to him.
No, I did not hear the general say that. It was definitely the chief of Kent Police. That testimony's wrong.
With counsel's approach. Mr. Kelner, I'm going to make this statement for the record so there won't be any doubt about it. This child is in search of the truth. Some public servant is making a transcript which everyone relied upon made the transcript incorrectly. And as a result, many people were misled into making statements that they were not true.
So no one lied during the grand jury testimony, no? It was all the fault of some clerk.
Mr. Kelner, I'm not going to permit you to clutter up this record under the pretense that you are impeaching the witness by that sort of deceit and trickery.
On my part, sir?
I'm not claiming it is deceit and trickery on anybody's part, but the fact of it is not true. Now, Jimmy DeCorso didn't make that remark, so I hope that is clear.
He just called Joe deceitful, and if I could hear it, you could be damn sure the jury heard it too.
There's a whole hell of deceit in this courtroom, all right.
Now, are you done with our good governor, Mr. Kelner?
Yeah, I'm done with the accused.
Well, I'd like to thank you and thank all you mighty fine people, and don't forget to vote for your favorite governor now.
Now, are you ready then to call your final witness, Mr. Kelner?
I'm more than ready, Your Honor. We call former Guardsman Michael Delaney to the stand. Mr. Sindel will take the next witness.
Mr. Delaney, you were a member of the National Guard company deployed at Kent State. Could you tell us something of your role at the time we're concerned with?
I was an NCO with the 145th Infantry and acted as the press liaison officer for headquarters.
And you were consequently present at the meeting of Monday morning at the Kent Firehouse on May 3rd.
Yes, I was.
Who else was present at this meeting?
There was the county prosecutor, Mr. Ronald Kane, representatives from the university, local law enforcement, several officers from the Guard, and Governor Rhodes. Probably in all about 15 people.
Were there any members of the press present?
No, there were not.
Would you please tell the court what Governor Rhodes said at this meeting?
The governor said the meeting was off the record and that no notes should be kept. He said that he was there to try and assume full command of the situation. He said that the university representatives should stay out of it because the campus was under Guard control. He said that if the firemen were sent out again, then they would have troops in full support. Then he said something like...
Let me tell you something, gentlemen. As long as I'm governor of Ohio, the Kent State campus will remain open. There's a group of agitators and students collaborating together in a conspiracy to bring chaos to this good town and close that campus down. But I will keep it open, even if I have to station a damned armed guard in every classroom. I make myself clear.
There was no ambiguity who was in charge that day. No, sir.
Did Governor Rhodes say anything about how the Guard should deal with any rallies on campus?
Oh, yes, sir. He said that the National Guard should use whatever force was necessary to disperse any student rallies, and he did not want to see any two students walking together.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Your witness.
Mr. Delaney, there was numerous parties present at this meeting, and your memory as to what the governor said or didn't say could be mistaken, could it not?
No. I remember everything from that weekend very clearly. It is something in my life I will never forget.
How many officers of the Guard were present at this meeting?
At least 3 or 4.
Can you name any of them?
No, sir. They tended not to socialize with men of my pay grade.
Can you remember if any officers of the Guard asked a question of the governor?
There was one question I do specifically recall. One officer asked about the legality of our situation in respect of our deployment.
And what was the governor's response to that question?
In substance, that it was a martial law situation and that when he returned from Columbus, he would issue a proclamation to that effect.
You say in substance, but can you be sure the governor used those actual words, martial law?
I don't recall the governor using those specific words, but his answer was in response to someone else asking a question with that specific term.
And do you remember if martial law was ever specifically proclaimed?
I was never told that it was, and I don't believe it was. No, sir.
I see. No further questions.
If you please the court, a brief redirect, Your Honor.
If you keep it extremely brief, Mr. Governor, the court will be most pleased.
Yes, Judge. Mr. Delaney, I understand from your previous testimony that you took it upon yourself on May 4th to check in with both the hospital in Ravenna and the Guards medical tents located near Bowman Hall.
That is correct, sir. Yes.
Excellent. That's commendable of you. But how many of your fellow soldiers did you find injured in either of these locations?
Injured, sir?
Objection, Your Honor. Is Delaney a qualified medic?
Well, yes, sir. I'm a combat medic, certified, sir.
The witness may answer.
We had one man who suffered shock who was taken to Ravenna Hospital, but there were no other injuries either reported or that I can recall anyone mentioning.
Because, this is confusing. We've heard endless testimony from your fellow guardsmen about missiles, consisting of everything from concrete slabs to nail-studded golf balls and apples with blades of glass sticking out of them. In fact, one of your colleagues even said that they sustained an injury to their arm, I think.
Is there a question here, Your Honor?
My line will become clear, Your Honor.
Crystal clear, I hope, Mr. Governor.
Diamond cut clear, Judge. Mr. Delaney, as I said, we have heard lots of testimony about missiles coming at you from all sides that day. How do you reconcile with the fact that apart from the mental trauma that you mentioned one of the men sustained, there's no record, either on paper or from your own investigations, of a single man being injured?
I don't believe anyone was injured. I think the most deadly thing thrown in my direction was a water balloon filled with urine. And it was enough to cause offense, but not enough to cause injury.
Oh, that's most revealing. Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Nothing further, Judge.
I'm Joe. The only student on campus anyone actually admitted to shooting that day. It's hard to believe any of us might have gotten shot because someone threw a urine balloon at the National Guard. Although, don't get me wrong, I do hope some of them did actually get covered in actual piss. Especially their own. I mean, that's what you do when you're in fear for your life, right? I wasn't even part of the anti-war movement before I got to Kent State and really only had a passing interest in what was happening in world politics. After Kent State, I guess you could say I didn't trust those in power enough to look after my interest, and it seemed like if you disagreed with the people in power in a way that they didn't approve of, you could get shot. More importantly, I did manage to finally getting around to asking Galen out on a date. So, Galen, I was planning on seeing this new shark movie this Friday. I was wondering if you might want to come along.
Joe Lewis, are you asking me out on a date? Because, well, I've been asked out on dates before, and that's kind of what it sounded like to me.
No, I'm sort of. It's just that it's supposed to be really scary. So it's more like you're coming to
hold your hand.
Exactly. No, if you want to. It's supposed to be really frightening. So I was just maybe just when the shark shows up, I figured we might have to.
Okay, I will go and see Jaws with you.
Great. Cool. I'll bring some milk duds. I learned a vital lesson on that date. Milk duds are not good for one's teeth. Speaking of sharks, it was back to court the next week as usual with yet more unbelievable surprises awaiting us. Oh, and by the way, Jaws did scare the hell out of us both. We got to hold hands like a lot.
All rise.
Please proceed, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense would like to call its final witness, Mrs. Joy Bishop, formerly Joy Hubbard, to the stand.
Wasn't she supposed to be a witness for us?
She was, but then she changed her mind.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mrs. Bishop, in May of 1970, you were a student at Kent State University, correct?
I was, yes.
Mrs. Bishop, if I could show you a photograph from May 4th. Now, in the background of this photograph, you will notice a trio of individuals on the roof of Johnson Hall who have a panoramic view of events on Blanket Hill. Could you, for the court, please identify those three individuals?
Yes, that's me, standing on the left with Pat Frank and Bruce Phillips.
And in which direction were you facing at the time of these events?
To the southeast.
And from your position, were you able to have observation of the events that took place that day?
In part.
Prior to the Guardsman firing, please describe to us what you saw.
I saw a man dressed in a gold, yellowish sports coat come to the corner of Johnson Hall from the Commons area. He had a briefcase in his left hand. He stood at one corner very briefly, pulled a gun from the briefcase and fired one shot in the air.
What was the next thing that you observed, Mrs. Bishop?
I then saw this individual leave the same way he had come.
And how much time elapsed from the shot that you described hearing to the shots from the Guardsman's rifle?
2 to 5 seconds.
I see. Thank you, Mrs. Bishop. No further questions, Your Honor.
May I?
My guest.
Mrs. Bishop, you claim to have seen the two events you described, the man in the gold coat and the firing of the Guardsman almost simultaneously, just a few seconds apart, correct?
Yes.
Well, Johnson Hall consists of two wings set at a right angle, and in fact, where you were standing in this picture, you would have been facing northeast, not southeast.
Right. Yes. Sorry. I got confused. But I saw everything I described.
Okay. Well, you said in your Justice Department statement, this man appeared on the northeast wing corner of Johnson Hall.
Yes, that's right.
Well, this picture identifies your position at the time of the shootings as being on the roof of the middle of the southeast wing.
Yes. Looking at the photographs, that would be the southeast wing.
Right. Well, you see, the problem is, Mrs. Bishop, that you can't see the northeast corner of Johnson Hall from that position.
I might have moved at some point.
Well, you said in your statement that you did see the guard turn and fire on the hill.
Yes, I did. But I was on the northeast wing when the shooting commenced, and I moved when the firing started to my position in the photograph.
I see. Well, did you walk or run?
I walked.
Oh. But you said only 2 to 5 seconds elapsed between you seeing this man and you seeing the guard fire. Now, from your first position, you could not have seen the guard, only the man. So how is it you could have seen both of those things occur?
I don't know. I may have walked or ran. I can't remember.
Because, it would be difficult to walk 250 feet in a couple of seconds.
Objection, Your Honor. These pictures clearly show Mrs. Bishop standing at the end of the northeast wing.
Forgive me, Your Honor, but I don't think my esteemed colleague knows the university grounds as well as he thinks he does, because that's not correct.
Listen, he can cross-examine the witness about pictures all day long, but I think they show something entirely different from what Mr. Kelner Sr. and Jr. proposes.
That's right. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Kidding?
Do you think I'm a man known for my sense of humor in my courtroom, Mr. Kelner Jr.?
No, Your Honor. Mrs. Bishop, when you ran back to your two friends on the roof, did you make any mention of them to this man you saw firing the gun before or after the shootings?
No, I did not.
And did you mention it when the Justice Department reopened the case in 1973 when you were re-interviewed by the counsel?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I don't know why.
I see. No further questions, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the defense rests.
Very well. Mr. Brown, I'll say that the court appreciates that you were able to examine your witnesses in just 5 days, and we are most grateful to you, sir. Now, noting the hour, we shall adjourn for the day and hear closing arguments on Monday.
All rise.
The main part of the trial was over. It had run for 15 weeks and heard evidence from over 100 witnesses. So as you can imagine, you've only heard a fraction of that evidence. The case for the defense, on the other hand, lasted only 5 days. I'm Dean, by the way. But you knew that, right? Like I said before, the defense clearly thought the less time the jury got to see me sitting in court in my wheelchair, the better. Nothing like seeing a man down in a wheeled chariot to elicit sympathy from the jury. You see, I was just between classes when this happened to me. I was majoring in physical education, by the way, so I'm sure you can see the irony. So finally, the parties retired to work on their closing arguments, and I could see the toll the case had taken on my friends and all of our parents. They were all so brave to have endured all that they saw and heard in that courtroom. Kelner and his team pored over all the documentation again once more as they got ready to make closing arguments. But there was still more surprises to come.
I'm surprised the case for the defense was so short. I thought we'd be here for another 3 weeks.
Well, it's part of their tactic. State the issues of the case as simple and present a simple case. But their strategy isn't simple, I'll guarantee you that.
Well, most of their key people have already testified for us anyway. We managed to refute their whole Terry Norman and gold coat theory. FBI themselves said he hadn't fired his pistol. Sure, they'd have been happy to feed him to the wolves if he had.
Yeah, well, it's just another attempt to confuse the jury.
I don't think they heard us. That fireman, Flemyng, he even admitted that the students helped him put his hose on the fire of the Rotzi building.
Joe, how's your closing coming along?
Well, it's getting there. I'm going to be using every prop, picture, and film that we have. I might as well, because it's the only time our honor judge won't be able to stop me.
Yeah, but somebody tell me how that idiot ever got appointed to the circuit court.
His uncle appointed him.
Oh, right, figures.
Joe, we're needed back in the courthouse right away. Judge Young has asked to see counsel for both parties. I think we have a problem with the jury.
Councillors, this is U.S. Marshal Wagner and District Attorney Frederick Coleman.
Nice to meet you all. I wish it was under different circumstances.
I trust I don't need to remind anyone of the need for secrecy regarding any discussions that take place in this chamber.
Absolutely.
Of course, Your Honor.
Of course.
Now, gentlemen, information has come to my attention that a member of the jury and their family has been approached and threatened on several occasions if he doesn't bring in the verdict in a certain way.
Now, my primary concern here is the damage to the integrity of the jury and to the trial itself. We have no way of knowing if anyone else on the jury may have received similar threats. So I will have no choice but to sequester the jury until we find out.
Is there any actual corroboration to this juror's story?
No, but we have to take this information at face value.
Well, corroboration or not, this juror is like to have been swayed by it, and I want him off the jury.
And what concerns me the most is what we're going to do with the others.
Unless this was a death threat, Your Honor, I don't think sequestration is a good idea.
They threatened to blow up his house. So as far as death threats go, that's at the more extreme end of the list.
Well, I didn't know that, Agent Coleman.
Your Honor, I don't think the nature of the threat should be discussed with the other members of the jury. The people behind this are probably counting on that and hoping that such a climate of fear will sway the decisions of the others on the jury as well.
The judge doesn't have to overemphasize the threats.
Exactly. Personally, I would play it down if I were the court.
Oh, I intend to, Mr. Sindel. I've made my decision. I will be replacing the threatened juror with an alternate, and for the sake of the integrity of the cause.
But surely, Your Honor, it's unfair to dismiss this juror for dutifully reporting such a threat.
But leaving him on it will infect the jury with an intangible fact that neither side can measure. And telling the jurors the extent of the threats will poison everyone else in the same way. He must be removed, Your Honor, and the reasons given to the rest with a strong level of subtlety.
You're all present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying behind after our recess today. But I am very much troubled by the information that has come to my ears that threats have been made to at least one of your number in an attempt to influence your decision in this case. Now, I was brought up in an old school that threats of this type are not to be ignored or taken lightly. You see, there have indeed been times when I've ignored such threats and I've had blood all over my hands as a result.
Jesus, this is his way of playing it down?
I don't propose to have it happen if I can avoid it. And as threats, well, have been made to life of at least one of you, I'm not sure we can solve this by simply dismissing one juror. So, with tremendous reluctance, I'm going to ask you from tomorrow to bring clothing and travel items so that we may have you stay in a place of protection. And I have no doubts about your integrity whatsoever. This is simply a question of your safety.
What about our families, Your Honor?
Well, it's impossible for us to give everyone 24-hour surveillance, but the Marshal Service would give them all a contact number should they get jittery or anything.
As an alternate juror, what should I do, Your Honor?
I think the alternates should continue to come to court for a day or so at least. I hope no one is struck by lightning between now and then, but that, after all, is what the alternates are for. It's like having an insurance policy. You don't want to use it, but you don't want to be without it. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please go and enjoy your lunch.
Enjoy your lunch? I can't believe it. He's as good as inferred that any one of them could die at any time.
How far is this going to damage the jury?
Oh, beyond repair, Bob. I need some fresh air. Oh, Fred, what's going to happen?
Joe, I really don't think it's such a good idea for you to be the only person on our team to do the summation tomorrow.
Why not?
Well, you said it yourself. You're an outsider. I'm a Cleveland lawyer. I think it's possible the jury might feel more sympathy towards a local voice.
After the opening and rebuttal, and the time Judge Young's allocated us, we've only got 20 minutes at most.
Well, we can work together as a duo, throwing points back and forth.
Yeah, well, like Butch and Sundance.
Well, if you like. We've been a partnership through this whole thing. Let's take this over the finish line together.
No. When I do my closing, I always work best alone. I need to ad-lib on my feet.
This isn't a time for ego, Joe. I know these people.
Ego's nothing to do with it, Fred. I have to do this my way.
I think it's a mistake.
Yeah.
But I guess it's your call.
Well, on my head be it.
Well, like I said, privileges of rank.
Yep.
It has been a long road. Tensions were high. As you can imagine, I didn't have much faith in the jury, the judge, or the court. I saw the way we were being treated, more like criminals than people who'd been shot and nearly murdered. I came back to Cleveland for the closing speeches and to hear the verdict. I wanted to be there to support Alan and the others, but I wasn't the only person having doubts. The day before his closing remarks, Joseph Kelner found himself standing once more on Blanket Hill, looking at the ground that had been enshrined in the blood of us all forever.
Big day tomorrow, Dad.
Hey, how did you know I'd be here?
Because I became a lawyer, not an accountant. Plus, it's where I be. Like father, like son. So, think we got a chance with the case?
Have you read Judge Young's charge?
Yeah. Thought I knew civil law pretty well, but even I had trouble reading between the lines on that one. God, it's totally biased in favor of the defense. God damn it, he might as well have directed the jury to bring in a not guilty verdict. I mean, I guess we can appeal if we have to.
What, and put the parents through the whole thing again? When we started this case, I was determined to win no matter what. But with that crock of a judge presiding over the court, I have a feeling our efforts will all have been in vain.
Dad, if it had been me lying there, would you take in this case?
Of course I would have.
Okay. So then tomorrow, when you start your closing remarks, you just remember that it could have been me lying there. Come on. Let's go get something to eat.
As long as we don't have to go to Mr. Brown's favorite steakhouse.
Sure.
Mr. Kelner? Mr. Kelner, good luck today. Our children are with you.
Eyes. This court is now in session. Judge J.D. Young presiding.
Now, having laid out my charge this morning, we will now hear the closing remarks from Mr. Brown for the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, the good Governor Rhodes and the Guardsmen all had a job to do over those fateful days in May, which was to restore law and order to a campus which only weeks before had seen revolutionary Jerry Rubin inciting and encouraging the very types of riots the campus would soon come to experience. As our good Judge Young read to you in his charge this morning, as soon as the guard ordered the students to leave the commons area, the students had no right to remain. Now, those students included the likes of Alan Canfora, sitting over there, who admits having been to SDS meetings. Robbie Stamps, who admits he thought the rally was illegal. And even Mr. Kaler, sitting there in his wheelchair, was photographed in the crowd earlier that day. If the students had dispersed from this unlawful assembly, then I put it to you, the unrest would have died out on its own, and the tragedy that followed would never have occurred. And May 4th would not be a day of any note in our history books. The students gathered in the commons area were given countless warnings by the guards to leave the area. And when eventually this was unsuccessful, the guard did what they were ordered to do: move out and force the students to disperse. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in a situation like this, not unlike combat that they found themselves in, things can often be confusing. Under pressure from a barrage of endless projectiles, they were in fear for their lives, ladies and gentlemen, that these hardcore radical protesters may have taken their weapons away from them. Even as they retreated back up the hill with the intention of going back to the ROTC, they were still under an intense assault from missiles, a verbal barrage of insults, were called pigs, and worse, by these angry young men and women who were poised to overrun them at any moment. So they reacted, as we say, to defend themselves, as they have said. We ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to think, what would you have done in that situation? Waited to be overrun? Or would you have fired? What happened on May 4th was an American tragedy. It was not the fault of the Guardsmen. No, they are honest and credible men. Nor is it the fault of our good Governor Rhodes, who had the interests and safety of every citizen of this fine county at the forefront of every decision he made. Let your verdict be a message, ladies and gentlemen, to other agitators and radicals that this type of behavior will not be tolerated on the campuses of this country's institutions of higher learning by bringing in a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that very concise speech, Mr. Brown. The court is most grateful to you, and well, can we expect equal brevity from you, Mr. Kelner?
I'm afraid mine will take a little longer, Your Honor.
Proceed then, Mr. Kelner.
Let us for a moment go back to that clear and sunny day of Monday, May 4th, 5 years ago. Let us see for ourselves what elements there were that made these members of the National Guard, armed with their tear gas, bayonets, pistols, shotguns, and deadly M1 rifles, so terrified that they would have us believe that they felt justified in firing indiscriminately at unarmed students on the grounds of a university campus that was going about its normal business. But for the presence of the student journalists there that day, you might have just taken their word for it. But these pictures, images, and sounds tell an altogether different story. So let us see what really happened. Monday, May 4th, would see as many as 6,000 students and 500 professors returning to the KSU campus. And despite the efforts of the university's administration to give out the letter to students banning rallies on the campus, less than 10% of them would ever receive it. Many of those arriving that Monday knew nothing of the events of the weekend and were surprised to find themselves arriving to a campus under military occupation. Many saw the burnt fragments of the ROTC building now roped off and guarded by men in green uniforms. News would soon spread throughout the campus. The Guard has taken over. That morning, Sandra Lee Scheuer, wearing a red blouse her mother had recently given her, sets out for her class talking with her friend.
I hear there's going to be a rally today protesting against the Guard on campus. Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, you want to go?
What? No. You know me. I try and keep out of politics. I just hope they don't cancel my class. I'm already getting behind on my assignments.
Dean Taylor had hardly slept the night before with the noise of helicopters constantly buzzing overhead. He was awoken by a phone call at 9 a.m. At 11:30 a.m., he left for the Commons, the meeting point of the rally. Joe Lewis Jr., having seen students chased by the Guard with bayonets and tear gas on the Sunday night, decided to attend the Monday rally to protest at the presence of the Guard. Doug Rentmore went to the student union with a roommate to meet another friend, and when the friend didn't show, they decided to search for him on the Commons and walked in the direction of the Victory Bell. James Russell, a student who prior to May 4th had ridiculed those who had attended such demonstrations, returned on the Sunday and was beaten by guardsmen when he tried to pass a blockade, which barred him from reaching his own frat house. John Cleary, who had assisted the firemen in putting out the fires at the ROTC building, arrives on the Commons, hoping to get some good shots of the rally with his camera. Tom Grace and Alan Canfora both arrive on the Commons near the Victory Bell to actively join the protest. Donald Scott McKenzie finds his Monday morning class canceled, so he goes to the Commons and sits on the grass near the tennis courts, watching the Guard begin to assemble north of the Victory Bell. William Schroeder arrives on the campus at 11 a.m. to take his test in war tactics in the building located next to the burned out remains of the ROTC hut. En route, he bumps into a friend, Gene Pekarik.
Hey, Bill, what you got there?
Hey, man, it's just my assignment for the ROTC class.
You're not still thinking of joining the Army, are you? I mean, that could be you on our campus right now.
Don't joke about that. I got a few friends on duty today. So you going to the rally by the bell later?
I might take a look. You?
Nah, but I might just check out and see what's happening, on my way to class.
Alison Krauss, too, had a sleepless night. After leaving the Tri-Towers dorms that morning, she meets her friend, Bonnie Henry, to discuss the night's events.
Did you get any sleep last night?
No, are you kidding? They had those damn helicopters buzzing back and forth, shining their stupid lights in every room all night.
Where's Barry?
He said he'd meet us at the rally. We're going to demand the National Guard leave the campus. I just saw them assault a student. We've got to get them out of here.
Is the rally going to be safe?
Well, of course. Those rifles aren't even loaded.
I heard 2 kids got stabbed last night, bayoneted. I don't know, Allison. I'm not sure.
Listen, Bonnie, it will be fine. Trust me. We just need to take a stand and make them leave. Then everything will go back to normal soon. You'll see.
While walking to class at around 10 a.m., Robert Sams is spotted by an old classmate, Robin Heffelfinger, who's now a guardsman in A Company.
Hey, Robbie! Rob Stamps!
Holy shit, Hef. Is that you?
Yeah, crazy, huh? Who'd have thought we'd live to see a day like this?
The world's fucked up, man. Oh, God.
I tell you something, Robbie. I really wish we didn't have to be here.
That makes 2 of us, man. I'll catch you later.
Having asked his mother for permission to attend his first campus rally, Jeffrey Miller, who has not long turned 20, meets fellow student Dane Griffin. They arrive on the Commons to be greeted by the sight of some 600 students congregating by the Victory Bell and facing the guard opposite, who begin to form a skirmish line. A distance of some 150 feet lies between them. The students had come casually at first, many just wanting to see what was happening. Several of the classes that were due to finish at 11:50 had been let out early, some professors even encouraging their students to attend the rally. Others would be wandering by, waiting for the 12:05 classes to commence. At 11:30 a.m., General Canterbury, fresh from his meeting with his officers, arrives on the scene. Unaware most of the students hadn't even heard of the band, he's surprised by the numbers on the Commons, swelled by the end of the 11 a.m. classes. Dean Kaler began to cross the Commons and stopped to watch the guard with the crowd. At 11:45 a.m., General Canterbury issues his orders.
Go home,
pigs! Go home, pigs! Go home, pigs!
Go home! We gonna let these hippies get away with this shit?
Major Smith?
Yes, sir!
Prepare Company C to move out to disperse the crowd. Take your man around the left flank.
Yes, sir! C Company! Prepare to move out!
That's more like it. A Company, form up.
What are you still doing here?
Go home, pigs!
The Jeep is driven across the Commons and a bullhorn is used by Officer Rice in an attempt to disperse the crowd. But by now, the crowd is becoming confrontational, the actions of the Jeep only adding fuel to the fire. Dane Griffin and Jeff Miller are standing near the front of the crowd. Bill Schroeder and Gene Pekarik arrive at the side of the Commons near the ROTC building.
You know, that M1 rifle can do some real damage in the wrong hands. If they start getting trigger happy, we don't want to be in the wrong place.
Don't worry. Most of those rifles probably aren't even loaded. Come on, I need to get in my class.
Alison Krauss and Barry Levine find themselves standing in the middle of the rally.
Get off our campus! Go home, you fucking creeps!
At 11:55 a.m., the order is given to ready.
Go home, pigs!
Go home, pigs! Go home, pigs! Go home, pigs!
Go home, pigs! Goddamn hippies, have the men fix bayonets!
Yes, sir! Companies, fix bayonets!
Lock and load weapons!
Companies, lock and load!
Hands
up, off campus! Off campus!
Doug Rentmore arrives at the side of the Commons and watches what unfolds. Sandra Scheuer arrives by the tennis courts and also views the proceedings from a safe distance near where Scott McKenzie's sitting. Alan Canfora holding his flag and Thomas Grace, they were near the front of the crowd. Dean Kaler towards the back, James Russell and John Cleary stand by Taylor Hall watching the confrontation. Robbie Stamps is just arriving on the Commons, observing from a safe distance.
God damn it, can't light my cigar. Stand by with the tear gas!
Tear gas at the ready! On my order! Fire tear gas!
Oh my God! What are they doing?
Let's get out of here. Come on.
At exactly 12 noon, the 103 guardsmen and the 10 officers began to move out towards the retreating crowd.
Have the men move out to disperse the crowd.
Companies, move out!
G Company on me. Move on.
Come on, G Troop, let's move it! Let's go, let's go!
Let's go.
We can see that several of the students in this picture are smiling. Perhaps for many, this is still just a bit of fun. In the center is Bill Schroeder, clutching his folder for his class, looking puzzled. This young man, the member of the Reserve Officer Training Corps, caught up in these events, could only have been wondering what his country had come to. At 12:01, a crosswind blew across the commons towards Taylor Hall as the guardsmen kept up their barrage of tear gas. The smoke is inhaled into the building's ventilation system, causing even more students to exit onto the campus. As the guard advanced, Allison Krause is captured under the pagoda. With the classes now changing everywhere on the campus, students are making their way from one lecture to another, and they had an indisputable right to do so. The guard, upon reaching the hill, had at this moment the opportunity to return the way they had come, and a confrontation with serious violence at this stage had so far been avoided. At the summit of the hill, an order is given to march on down into the practice field. Largely unhindered, with the majority of the students remaining around the sides of Taylor Hall, the guard reached the practice field and realized from here they're fenced in on two sides. Student Beverly Knowles, situated in Prentice Hall, takes a panoramic photograph of the field. It shows 31 students on the forecourt of the parking lot and the main body still on Blanket Hill. Sandy Scheuer enters the parking lot at this time on her way to her next class. The guard on the field hold their position, unsure of what to do next. Some students throw back the guard's tear gas canisters and the odd rock is thrown, but even Mickey Mantle would have had trouble hitting the guard at this distance. At 12:10 p.m., 16 of the guard from G Troop drop to one knee and assume a provocative firing position. Someone must have given that order. 16 men do not just simultaneously assume a firing position unless they are ordered to do so. Some of the officers and NCOs believe they're out of tear gas, but Specialist Russell Rep of Company A still in fact had 8 canisters, proving already that communication had broken down. At 12:18 p.m., the 77 men and officers are ordered by Colonel Fassinger to regroup back at the ROTC building. This will effectively mean going over the route they've already taken and can only be viewed in the eyes of the students as a retreat, and in the eyes of the guard, a defeat. They would simply end up back where they'd started with, nothing having been achieved. Yet before they move out, the men of G Troop do something unusual as witnessed by Peter Winham, formerly a forward artillery observer in Vietnam.
I saw the guardsmen go into a kind of huddle, and it was obvious to me that some sort of decision had been reached, you know?
I put it to you that at this moment they had decided they had had enough. That hot, angry, and humiliated, they decided there and then that they would teach these hippies a lesson. On the field, Alan Canfora taunts the guard with his black flag.
Hey, don't worry. They're only carrying blanks. They're not loaded. Hey, come on, John, get some good pictures. Hey, come on. Why did you shoot me? Huh? Why not?
Another humiliation, perhaps one too many for the guard. At 12:22 p.m., Fassinger gives the order to move out back to the ROTC. The guard moved back up the hill with female students trailing behind, cursing and reviling them as they go. The guard's anger towards the students is fueled by this relentless verbal barrage. Film student Christopher Abel turns on his 8mm camera, filming their withdrawal. They reach the top at around 12:24 p.m. There was no students ahead of them, and the route back to the ROTC and their left flank are completely unimpeded. To their right flank and right rear, there are several students crowded around Taylor Hall. Many have been forced out of the building by the intake of the tear gas. Most are just bystanders, watching this dramatic scene unfold as the guard retreat back the way they came. Now, the closest student is perhaps 20 yards away. Hal Ruffner, here in Taylor Hall, at 40 yards away, pulls out his camera and begins taking a sequence of pictures which will prove crucial in understanding what happened next. Jeff Miller now stands at the far right of the parking lot.
Hey, Dame, we really showed them that time. Motherfuckers!
Allison Krause and Barry Levine stand in the parking lot observing the troops retreating to the top of the hill. Doug Rentmore, Bill Schroeder, and Sandy Scheuer are also all close by in the parking lot, well over 300 feet from the guard. Sandra, having watched the events on the practice field, now crosses the lot to get to her next lesson at the music and speech hall. Alan Canfora stands about halfway up the hill. Just near to him is Thomas Grace, and both are 200 feet away from the guard. Robbie Stamps is even further away at 550 feet on the other side of the parking lot. Assuming the confrontation is over, he's already walking away, talking to a young woman and offering her a pretzel. Joe Lewis is the closest to the guard at the side of Taylor Hall, taking pictures with his Instamatic camera at about 60 feet away. Scott McKenzie is the furthest at over 750 feet away, close to the far end of Prentice Hall. The guard is sent to the top of Blanket Hill. For many, especially those furthest away by the parking lot, it seems like the excitement of the day has come to an end.
Looks like it's over, guys.
Let's go, Barry. I've done enough protesting for one day.
See you later. Don't come back.
Sandra Scheuer is already heading back to class with her friend Alice.
Well, Sandy, that was exciting, huh?
I mean, it all looked pretty pointless to me. Look, I'd better get to class. I'm gonna be late.
Well, don't worry. I think everyone's probably gonna be late today.
The guard from A Company reached the top of Blanket Hill with the men of G Troop on the right flank trailing slightly behind. The closest student is perhaps 20 yards away, but most of them are massed by Taylor Hall, over 70 yards away. When Jim Nichols exits Taylor Hall, walking across their line of fire, he's waved away by a member of the guard. This man would later identify himself to Nichols at a gas station, telling him he had saved his life that day, reinforcing the fact that some members of the guard knew they were gonna fire. Student Christopher Abel's 8mm film shows no students rushing the guard at this time, as proven by the evidence given earlier on the stand by our own photo expert, Robert Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, in your expert opinion, is there any movement by persons towards the guard shown on this film?
There's no movement by anyone within 85 feet of the guard until 4 seconds into the film.
Interesting. And after the first 4 seconds, there is movement on the film?
Yeah, and it's away from the guard. That's the moment when his shots are fired.
The students, sensing a victory of their own, ring the bell again as the guard is seen to be withdrawing. Student Jack Deacon observes his roommate, Tom Masterson, who's being clubbed over the head by a guardsman with a revolver. Debbie Marlin, standing close by, receives similar treatment, as she testified to earlier on the stand.
As the guard came back up the hill, they were furious. A short man pulled out his pistol and waved it in my face, and about 50 seconds later, I saw them open fire.
Bill Montgomery, an ex-Vietnam veteran, saw the guardsman stop and turn.
I have seen men panic and fire many times, and what happened at the pagoda didn't look like no panic to me. And they certainly weren't reacting to no sniper, because if you suspect there's a sniper, you try and locate him, not just turn around and fire blindly into a crowd.
Scientific analysis of audio recordings made that day proves conclusively there was no sniper shots, and the sound of the first shot is that of an M1 rifle firing, the weapon of the guard. It's 12:24 p.m. when the first bullet is discharged. Their escape route unimpeded, few students, if any, are close enough to be of any real threat. Yet 28 members of the guard turn and aim their weapons. Maybe an order was given. Perhaps it had already been decided earlier on the practice field. The 28 men fire their weapons, and 67 bullets are unleashed in 13 seconds.
Cease fire!
Cease fire! God damn it!
Your fire!
So, who fired? Well, we know Sergeant Schaefer did, because he told us as much on the stand. We know Myron Pryor did, as the photographs showing his pistol, after all, speak for themselves. Photographic, forensic, and witness evidence tell us that 28 of the men on that hill fired their weapons. So who were the other 26? Sergeant Smith fired 3 shotgun rounds, one more than we could decipher from the audio recordings. Sergeant Herschler, he admitted to the FBI that he shot 2 students and he had to go to Ravenna Hospital suffering from shock. Others too, in their testimony to the state grand jury or the FBI, admitted they had fired their weapons. A Company privates James Farris, Ronnie Myers, Russell Rep, and Lonnie Hinton all admitted they fired into the air. In G Troop, James Pierce tells the FBI he fired 5 times. Almost all the men from this unit are shown to have fired their weapons. Privates James McGee, William Perkins, Lloyd Thomas, and Ralph Zoller were all short of ammunition when they handed in their weapons, and no doubt there were others. Whoever fired which shot and whatever they believed, now there were several students lying wounded or dying on the ground. Did A Company and G Troop render any assistance? Did they call for medical help? No. Instead, one man, Captain Snyder, even tried to plant a gun on the body of Jeff Miller. The story of self-defense for the Guard is already being manufactured. Even while the wounded were being taken away, the actions by the Guard in the aftermath of this tragedy was threatening to spill over into further bloodshed. But thanks to the quick intervention of several of faculty, led by Glenn Frank, a second, even bloodier confrontation is avoided. But for 4, it is too late. Jeff Miller was killed outright. Allison and Sandy, he died before reaching the hospital. And Bill Schroeder on the operating table shortly after arrival. No matter what happened on the weekend before Monday, May 4th, it is a certain fact that these men fired their weapons on a crowd doing nothing more than exercising their democratic right to protest. For this reason, my clients and their children have been called troublemakers, hippies, whores, and scum. They were told they were communists and should leave this country. We've been told the Guard were brave and honorable men in fear for their lives. Yeah? Well, let's talk about bravery, ladies and gentlemen, because these parents sitting behind me of Allison, Jeff, William, and Sandra, they know the meaning of the word bravery. Coming here and sitting here every day, day after day, listening to their children being called every insulting and degrading name you can think of in this here courtroom. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, that is real bravery. You see, I thought the reason that we lived in the land of the free and the home of the brave and not behind some iron curtain is so we can speak out and voice our own opinions on things we don't agree with. We have that right. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called democracy. In fact, that very right is written into the Constitution. Yes, sir, as clear as day. These are the rights and freedoms that this country was built on. So anyone, even all of you, always have a right to protest. Sandra Scheuer and Bill Schroeder, they were exercising their right just to simply walk to class. But protesting or not, every single one of those killed and the 9 injured who sit here before you were all just exercising their rights, and those rights were violated. One of whom, Mr. Kelner, has no choice but to sit down here today because his spinal cord was severed below the waist by an M1 rifle bullet. He's in a wheelchair for life. The same National Guard were called out against the Teamsters strike only a few weeks earlier, and no one died there. Why? That's the question. Why? I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that the answer is a simple one. People died because those in charge inflamed the tensions on campus and then lost control of the situation that they had created. Once Governor Rhodes had given his speech at the firehouse on Sunday, he made it obvious he wanted to teach those students a lesson. He made sure a confrontation wasn't just a possibility. He made sure it was inevitable. His words that would filter down through the ranks. Force is necessary. Eradicate the problem. Ladies and gentlemen, such words can only be described as irresponsible. It is thoughtless. It is reckless. He drew no distinction between peaceful and non-peaceful because we say it was a peaceful assembly on Monday, May 4th, until the Guardsmen moved their Jeep out to challenge him. Then, having carried out their pointless maneuver across the commons, they withdraw. And then abruptly and without warning, they turn and open fire without any care in the world as to who might have been shot. There was no distinction given between protester and student. Even if they felt their lives were in danger, you don't shoot. You give warnings, you threaten, you use the rifle button, the bayonet, and then, and only then, would you use the last resort. But no, they turned and they fired. 67 bullets, 13 seconds, an eternity of time. Let us see for ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. 13 seconds. Time for them to stop. 13 seconds can be an eternity of time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there was no justification for what happened on that day. None. You must take it upon yourselves to show the people of this country and the world that the rule of law and order is alive in the United States of America. That they still have the democratic right to question their government's decisions to go to war in their name. They can say they disagree without living in fear of being shot. Other countries and other governments have done just that to their people in the past. Let us show that America is a place where such actions will not go unpunished. Otherwise, in the future, it will happen again and again. And the foundations of everything we hold dear, of the beliefs and rights that we hope our children will be able to cherish, will be lost. Thank you.
The jury will now retire to consider their verdicts.
I had to give it to Joe. It was one hell of a speech. And it was even longer than that. You guys got the abridged version. He even had me convinced we might actually have a chance in hell of winning. And several of the jury were hanging on his every word. It was late on the Friday, the 26th of August, 1975. Day 99 of the trial, that jury came back in. Everybody was there that day. Even those who had left the trial in disgust had come back for the verdict. Hey, Tom Grace, we got a verdict.
Hey, I heard. What are your plans after?
Oh, I'll be having a chat with Uncle Jack here either way.
Way ahead of you, buddy.
The jury are about to come back in.
Yeah, we heard. Is everyone here?
I think I've managed to gather all the flock.
I sure hope you put in a few Hail Marys for us, Father.
For you, Mr. Kelner, I put in 50.
Thank you.
I want you to know, Mr. Kelner, however this plays out, we know you did the best for our daughter.
Thank you.
No one could have fought harder than you did for this case, Joe.
I am not going to stop campaigning, Joe. No, sir. I'll write a letter every day until people know the truth about our daughter. She was a wonderful young woman, and I will keep on writing until the world knows about it too.
She was a wonderful woman, Arthur.
Oh, God, here comes that pig of a governor with those piglets of defendants.
You hope all you fine folks sure remember who to vote for governor now.
What a prick.
I don't need to hang around to hear that we have lost. I'm sorry, Joe.
Robbie, where you going?
I'm gonna go to San Diego to stay with my sister for a while.
Oh, come on, Robbie. You can't give up now. Hey, won't you feel foolish being on a bus to California when you hear on the radio that we've won and we're all here celebrating without you?
You don't really believe that, do you, Mr. Kelner? Whatever happens, thanks for everything you did for us. Take care.
Yeah.
Dad, you ready?
Yep. Let's go in.
Hear ye! Hear ye! Court is now in session. Judge J.D. Young presiding. I understand the jury has reached a majority verdict, Your Honor.
Very well. Clerk, will you read the verdicts out, if you please?
The United States District Court for the Northern District of Ohio, Eastern Division, civil number 70 through 544. Arthur Krause, administrator of the estate of Allison Krause, deceased, plaintiff, versus James A. Rhodes et al., defendants. We, the jury, on the issues joined, find in favor of the defendants.
No!
Quiet in my courtroom. Now, clerk, is the verdict signed by 9 of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Then please do continue.
Only 3 of them were on our side?
Which 3? It doesn't fucking matter now, does it?
Verdict in the case of Elaine B. Miller of Jeffrey Glenn Miller, deceased. We find in favor of the defendant.
We have truly come to a dark place in the woods in this world.
We, the jury, on the issues joined, find in favor of the defendants and against the plaintiff, Louis A. Schroeder.
No!
We failed. We, the jury, on the issues joined, find in favor of the defendants in the case against plaintiff Sandra Scheuer.
Sorry, Sandy. I'm so sorry.
It's still murder.
We, the jury, on the issues joined.
Murderers! You murdering bastards!
Remove that man from my court.
You won't get away with this.
Keep your hands off that boy!
This is an outrage! Where is the justice?
Find in favor of the defendants against the plaintiff John R. Cleary. We, the jury, find in favor of the defendants.
Happy I am! They were only a bunch of dummy lovers, weren't they? Kids who needed a hand, honey! Hey, have you got kids?
Any further more outbursts on that, and I'll have those removed from my courtroom.
Responsible? What do you know about responsibility? Those people are responsible. Those people, and you let them go.
Oh, God. Martin, I need a drink.
Jury.
Come on, I'm buying. I thought I had escaped from the Nazis, but I see fascism is alive and well in Cleveland. Yeah, I hate you, shyster! Verdammter Schweißkerl!
The juries find in favor of the defendants and against Alan Canfora. We, the jury, find in favor of the defendants and against the plaintiff, Douglas Rentmore.
None of you can possibly have kids. You don't deserve to have kids. You don't know what it's like to look.
Arthur, come on, Arthur. Arthur, let's get you out of here. Let's get the others out of here. Come on.
How could you? How could you tell us that our daughter was worth nothing?
Mrs. Scheuer, please come with me.
Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I do not think at any time of the history of our great nation anyone has been given such a hard task as you. No, you are entitled to the gratitude of not only everyone in this courtroom, but you are entitled to the gratitude of every living people in this great free land.
Freedom!
This trial has been a sham in every way!
You murdered my boy. You might have managed to hide from that in this courtroom, but you will never hide from God.
I'm sorry you feel that way, ma'am.
Oh, pay her no mind. She's just being a bad sport.
Oh, there are no sportsmen in this court, Mr. Brown. Only men with blood on their hands.
This has been a sad day for American justice, Your Honor. This verdict will not stand.
This court is adjourned.
Mr. Brown!
Mr. Brown! Mr. Brown!
How do you feel now your clients have been exonerated?
Gentlemen, you have now heard the last words on Kent State. What happened that day was a terrible, terrible tragedy. But I'm glad to see justice has been served by our great American legal system.
How do you feel about representing the Guardsmen?
Oh, they were fine, incredible men, and I was proud to represent them.
How do you feel about the verdict, General?
Well, I'm happy to say that the decision was a great victory for law enforcement in our wonderful country.
Oh, Mrs. Holstein, can you give us a few words? Mr. Krauss?
Oh, I certainly can. This verdict has given the government a license to shoot anyone who disagrees with them.
All this trial proves is that the Constitution's been destroyed, and if your daughter or your son gets murdered by men who are supposed to be serving this country, don't expect to find any justice in the American courtrooms.
Mr. Kaler, what do you think about the verdict?
This country has plunged into the depths of darkness when it says it's okay for a man in uniform to rob another of his life or his ability to walk or have children for doing nothing more than going about his business. We've been denied justice today, but we won't give up. Justice is human and our humanity will prevail. Please excuse me.
Oh, Mr. Kelner, will you and the families appeal against Judge Young's decision?
Well, that's up to my clients. But I believe the handling of this trial to be the worst miscarriage of justice ever seen in the American legal system.
Oh, Governor Rhodes!
Governor Rhodes, do you consider this a personal victory?
I think any such comment would be premature until the results of any appeal are decided, but I have every faith in our fine legal system and the people of this fine state that the decision made today will stand.
No, Governor Rhodes, Governor, what will you do now?
I will go home and buy some eggs and pour me a fine glass of Cleveland whiskey.
Oh, Governor, are you going to run again?
Yep, and I'm going to win.
Come on, Joe, let's go home.
Where, to the apartment?
No, to New York.
Oh, yeah, it sounds good.
Did great.
Yeah, I did my best, Bob. It just wasn't good enough.
We can still fight this.
Somehow we might win the appeal, but I don't think everyone's gonna want to face another trial.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say it was an honor working with you. I told you. You should have let me have my own closing speech.
Yeah, well, I think you might have been right. I guess you win some, you lose some. Just really wish we could have brought this home.
What will you do now, Joseph?
I think I'll write a book about the case.
Oh, yeah? Put me down for a copy. What would the title be?
The Kent State cover-up.
That's what I like about you, Mrs. Kelner. You call it like it is. Good working with you, Mr. Kelner.
Yeah, you too, Mr. Sindel. Make sure you thank the rest of the team for me, will you?
Get him on the appeal, Joe. There's no way the judge can get away with this.
Oh, I have a feeling, Galen, that my part in this story is at an end. Goodbye.
Thanks for trying, but this ain't over.
Thank you, John.
Bye, everyone.
As you can imagine, that day was the end of a painful journey for some of us, and I had to feel sorry for the Kelners. They really gave it their all, but returned to New York empty-handed. But Joe's son, Roberts, still continues his father's legacy of practicing law to this very day. And despite what Bert Charlie Brown thought, That was not the last word on our case. The Court of Appeals ordered a new trial, singling out the mishandling of the jury by Judge Young as their primary reason for doing so. But sadly, Joe was not allowed to continue to represent us, and ultimately the whole thing was settled out of court in 1979. But I'll let somebody else tell you about the rest of that case. By then, we'd all gone on to do different things, but all of us that were there that day, we would always be connected by that one moment in time. And we were blood brothers for life. And Doug Rentmore avoids giving interviews about Kent State these days, but he's married and still lives in Ohio. Scott McKenzie got up to all sorts before settling down in Colorado. He's married as well, has 2 kids, and we see him from time to time at the anniversaries. As for the rest,
James Russell, an extremely well-liked man with many friends, he too was married and is survived by his wife and daughter. In later years, Joe Louis would tell how Jim's positive attitude helped him through some of the toughest times in his life. James died of a sudden heart attack in 2007. Robbie Stamps went on to get a BA and 2 MAs. He got married.
Yeah, he got married and he traveled all over the world and spoke fluent Spanish. Sadly, he passed away in 2008, just after his friend James Russell.
When Joe Louis moved back to Oregon after the trial, Galen Keller upped and moved with him. They married and had a son of their own. So never doubt the benefit of seeing a Steven Spielberg movie for your first date. Although I would not recommend Schindler's List in that context. Sadly, Joe lost Galen to cancer in 1991, but he found love again in 1998. And together he married his wife, Lisa, and they have 7 children between them. He doesn't deny his part in Kent State, but he is a husband, a father, and grandfather, and great-grandfather first. We are most grateful for his support for this production.
Dean got the highest amount of compensation in the settlement. You might say he has a philosophical way of looking at the events of May 4th, and he still considers Kent State his second home, returning there whenever he can. He's still around today and gave his much valued assistance to this production. What happened to the story of the other players? I'd love to be able to tell you years later that just one of the guardsmen had a conscience and apologized to us all, but it didn't happen. Despite having been clearly photographed doing so, Sergeant Myron Pryor proclaimed he never fired his pistol on May 4th until the time of his death in August 2002, and it was much the same for the likes of Canterbury, Snyder, and the rest. They were all unrepentant until the end.
Alan and Tom Grace both remained social activists and became historians on the era. And they remained good friends right up until Alan passed away in December of 2020. You know, the reason he'd shout, "Hey, Tom Grace," was because there was another Tom in our class. Tom still misses Alan very much. We're grateful to both Alan and Tom Grace for their assistance with this production. In time, Kent State University would come to terms with its role in history and open the May 4th Visitor Center. So the yearly commemoration would never again carry an air of shame, but something to be remembered. But what of that out-of-court settlement back in 1975? The parents of the deceased, Jeffrey, Allison, William, and Sandra, received $15,000 each for the lives of their children, and a letter of apology signed by the defendants. Let me ask you something. How much do you think the lives of your children are worth?
My Sandy, she was priceless. Governor James Rhodes was elected again in '78, ran again for re-election in 1986. The Kent State University May 4th Task Force made the events of 1970 a campaign issue, so he lost. He died in March of 2001. As for Sarah Scheuer, she continued the campaign of justice for her daughter, outliving her husband before finally passing away just 2 days before the 40th anniversary on May 2nd, 2010. She is survived by her daughter, Audrey, who assisted this production, and her granddaughter, Shauna.
To date, no one has ever been successfully prosecuted in connection with the deaths of Jeff Miller, Sandra Scheuer, Alison Krauss, and William Schroeder, or any of the 9 students who are injured. A paltry statement of regret was the only thing they ever received from the National Guard by way of an apology. Florence and Louis continued to campaign for their son until the last of their days. Louis passed away in 2000 and Florrie Dory in 2017, just before her 98th birthday.
No disciplinary action was ever taken against any members of the National Guard who were present at Kent State campus on May 4th, 1970. The university finally gave our children the memorial they deserved, and it embraced its unwanted place in history. Arthur Krauss continued to campaign for justice right up until his death in 1989. His beloved wife, Doris, outlived him by almost 30 years, passing away in 2016.
Former Senator Stephen Young called the trial on the shootings a miscarriage of justice. And he said that he regretted having sponsored his nephew, Judge J.D. Young, to the federal bench, stating that it was the worst appointment I ever made. Well, he was far more polite than I ever would have been about it. Anyway, despite the death of the murder of her son, Jeff, Elaine always said she was grateful for the life she had had. Yeah, she gave many interviews about Jeff and Kent State and attended most of the commemorations. But she was also determined to live the rest of her life to the full. And so she did, being the last of the parents to go at the ripe age of 94 in 2018.
As for Alan, he dedicated his life to making sure the truth about Kent State was always heard, and continued with a career in social activism. He went through some tough times, like everybody does, but he found life. He found love later in his life with his beloved Anna. And they have just the most beautiful children, Maya and Lev. We hope that they see this one day, and we want them both to know how much their dad loves them. I only wish we could have had more time together. In his older years, he finally took Mr. Sindel's advice and shaved off the beard. But thankfully, later on, they came back into fashion, which pleased him greatly. In his older years, he would go on to give talks about May 4th at universities across the country. And when he went back to Kent to give a talk in the aftermath of the 2003 Iraq War, he got asked a question, which I can imagine that some of you out there listening might be wanting to ask him yourselves.
I would just like to thank Alan Canfora for that wonderful presentation today.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kent State. And as I said, it's great to be back here. Are there any questions?
Yes. Hi.
Did you attend any anti-war protests against the US involvement in Iraq?
I sure did. Did you?
No, not yet. I guess your answer to this question will influence whether I do or not.
Well, no pressure. You fire away.
You protested against the war in Vietnam and Cambodia, and the government still continued the war. You protested against the most recent war in Iraq, and the government still invaded. And you've lost 4 friends. I was just wondering, is it worth still protesting if no one ever listens and nothing ever changes?
So is it worth doing it all if nobody ever listens? That's what you mean, right?
Yes, I suppose that's what I mean.
Well, you were listening. I mean, you made that choice to come here today. Why? Because like you, like all of you, I was part of a young generation growing up in troubled times where my government was doing things in my name that I didn't understand. And I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to know why. I disagreed with the government and I wanted to show them how I felt. But I guess what you're asking is, why protest at all?
Yes.
Well, in the naivety of the 70s, maybe we thought we could make changes. And now we look at the world today, and I've often had doubts of it of my own. I've often asked myself, did I allow that one sunny day in May 1970 to define my whole life? And if I have, was it worth it? So, you sitting there, here, now, asking me this question, giving me the honor to have even a small influence in your life, but that tells me that it was. How many other lives have Jeffrey, Sandy, Allison, and Bill touched upon, who can fail to gaze upon their photographs and wonder what they might have become, whose lives they might have touched? Yet in death, they have touched so many. So I marched for peace, not only for myself, but for them, to honor their memory, not just for the same cause, but to ensure their deaths will not have been in vain. And do those in the positions of power ever notice or even care? When 10 million people go on a peace march, you better believe me. Yeah, you see those kind of numbers, they kind of scare them. And you can bet that they listen. And you can bet that they see us. If there was no voices for them listening to when they murdered 4 young innocent lives, if there was no one watching while they sent troops to stand guard at a liberated bank in Iraq and leave the city hospital to be looted and pillaged, if there is no protest, no lines of people blocking their way, no crowds marching when another kid has been shot or killed by a man in uniform in the street, if we did nothing, imagine what they would do then. There's a saying that goes like this. You see a window, you see a house with a broken window, and then somebody doesn't come to fix that window. Next week, there'll be 2 windows broken because people know they can get away with it. You have to fix that broken window, all of you. Because sitting there, you need to remind our leaders that they live to serve and not to rule. And it is you and people like you who form the threads of democracy, not them. We are the people who hold the fabric of society together. And sometimes it pays to remind them of that. That answer your question?
Yes. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And listen, all of you, remember, everyone stand for something or fall for standing for nothing. Tell me, is there a bar still in this place? I think I could do with a drink.
Nothing at all. I have only slipped away into the next room. I am I and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we still are. Call me by my old familiar name.
Speak to me in the easy way you always used to. Put no difference into your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh, as we always laughed, at the little jokes we enjoyed together.
Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name forever be the household name it always was. Let it be spoken without effect,
without the trace
a shadow on it.
Life means all that it ever was. There is absolutely unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I am but waiting for you, for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well.
Hello, I'm going to ask my wonderful cast to put their cameras on and stay muted for just a moment. Everyone worked incredibly hard on this production. We had more technical issues on tonight's episode typically than any other episode that we've done. Not in the places that I was expecting, ironically. And we'll have to review the footage and see if we can possibly improve it a little bit. But it's been a tremendous collective effort. Any piece of art or any performance is by the very definition a collaboration. As you can see, most of us are still sitting in the auditorium, but Laura has decided to go to court because Joy Bishop's now being prosecuted for lying on the stand. So I'd just like to say on behalf of all of the Outcasts Creative, what an absolute privilege and a pleasure it's been to tell a version of this story within the limited means that we had at our disposal. Our composer is being shy, so I'm just going to try and start her video camera. There we go. We've worked incredibly hard to bring this story to you, performing it live on every episode with no margin for error, to tell a story about the erosion of democracy in our society. This is a subject that's very close to many of the hearts of the people that have taken part, probably all of them, I would think. It's very close to my heart, and it's something that worries me greatly. And I hope in some small way, and it probably is a small way, our production will make a contribution towards not only the narrative of Kent State, but the narrative of humanity and how, as human beings and as a race, we should learn to treat one another with more respect and, well, just be kinder to one another. Somebody said that on I think, the radio interview we gave earlier today. Be kind to one another. It's a lot harder sometimes to be kind, and it's a lot easier to be quick to anger in the world that we live in, with so many different creeds, religions, and beliefs. But I think you have to allow the space to listen to other people. You have to allow space in your life for other people's beliefs, and just respect the fact that they may not be the same as yours. If we can start with that basic principle of respecting that we all have different views and opinions on things, then maybe as a society, we have a chance of moving forward. That is my most sincere hope. And it's what I hope for the history of our future. Whether past is prologue remains to be seen. That's a little Easter egg I've thrown in there. You can write in and tell me if you know where it's from. So it now just remains for me to tell the cast that we might need to do it all again because of some technical problems. But I want to thank everybody for the huge amount of work they've put in since we begun this journey last October. Some of us have been on it even longer than that. And hand on heart, it's been one of the most unique and emotional productions I've ever worked on. And I haven't even met half the people that you're looking at in person yet. Some of them of whom I've worked on productions with twice. So please do subscribe to our channel. We're going to be doing other productions online. We're always going to do at least one a year. And there's also going to be other videos and blogs coming along in a similar vein. I'd like my cast to take a bow now, and because they very much deserve one. And thank you so much for watching. Do share the love, and we hope to catch you all again soon. And perhaps, you never know, we might be at the Kent State anniversary to honour those who fell there that day next year. Pandemic pending, we shall see. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Have a fantastic night, and the best